Hey guys, I just started an Amazon affiliate link, so if you want to help me be able to make better content, please purchase something by clicking the link in the description and purchasing anything. It won't cost you anything extra and will really help build this community. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the video. Welcome to r/confessions, where we hear of some of the most disgusting confessions. I had sex with my dad. I wasn't, and still am not, in a good place mentally. My dad was out of my life since I was a kid, mostly because my mom got custody of me and he didn't have any visitation rights. When I was 18 I got to meet him, and I kept feeling weird about it. My mom always told me he was a pretty bad person, irresponsible, etc. We usually met with my mom around, but my mom later moved to a different part of the country. I've been having mental health issues mostly because I was in a very abusive relationship at the time, and I met with my dad a few times on my own because I just felt super lonely and needed company. He was actually a pretty supportive person, and we just spent time talking or going places for fun, and he didn't seem as bad of a person as my mom always told me he was. He really started getting involved in my life after I tried to commit suicide. He was super worried, and at that time I pushed my mom away because I got back with my abusive ex. I had no other friends. It was a really toxic situation. I don't know why or how, but I kept finding him attractive, and I don't want to go into the details of it because it still makes me super uncomfortable. But basically he was trying to be a dad because he'd been out of my life for so long, and I somehow twisted that, and we ended up having sex when all he was doing was trying to help me with the fact that I was suffering a lot. Needless to say, it destroyed what little of a relationship we had in the first place, and to this day I hate myself for it. After we did that once, we did it a few more times, but it was the worst thing I could have done with him. It's even worse than having your father out of your life, because at least you don't have to blame yourself for it. Having your own father in your life, but having him not want to see you again because of what happened, because of something you did yourself, is what hurts. You look at everyone else who still talks or has a good relationship with their father, and you hate yourself because you ruined everything. You could have had that, but you ruined it. I just wanted to share this, and it's still on my mind now. I've been going to therapy to try and get this figured out, but my dad wants nothing to do with me anymore, and I don't blame him. Now for the next story. Ran a virtual escort ring when I was 15 on PlayStation Home for PlayStation cards, and I've never told anyone. It's true, I did it, and major parts of me regret it. Although it was online, it was still bad, although I made so much money off it. For the first time ever I'm going to tell the story. I was 15 when PlayStation Home dropped. For those who don't know, it was Virtual Social Hub that was on PlayStation for many years. They now have one called Nebula's World on PS4 that's exactly like it. Anyway, you created an avatar. They had sponsors of real clothing brands who had virtual replicas of real clothes. You could buy a house, yacht, etc. Create your own club, and even buy a clubhouse. You had places where you could hang out that was almost endless, from bars to beaches to even a racetrack. It was literally like a second life for some people. My cousin first showed me it when it was in beta. I didn't care for it at first, and later on, about a year after I slowly got into it, met some cool people and find myself on there a few times a week. One day I met this girl on there who turned out to be an escort in real life. She was brutal and mean as hell, but for some reason was cool and respected me. She would talk about her days, all the things she did, daily life things, tell her about her clients, etc. We never became close, but she was cool. She then talked about how she had this one guy who was on show who would beg her to having sex through text, and she would refuse. That's when I jokingly said to see if he's pay her for it. She asked, and he did. Like $100 for it in two $50 PS cards. After it was done, she gave me half for it. That's when I had the idea. Took me like a whole day. I told her about the idea, and she liked it. I'd bring her the clientele, and she'd text them. Of course, getting them to pay $100 was rare, so we dropped it to $50 or two $25 PS cards and split. Sometimes I'd go to eBay and sell a bulk of cards for cheaper to get real cash. We did this about a month before she found another girl online that was willing to do it. She got on mic and confirmed she was a female. I'd set her up on the process and then things went as normal. I'd chat with females online and recruit more over time. Eventually we were at like 10, so I bought a virtual clubhouse. They'd buy nice virtual slutty outfits and we had a whole business at work. Of course, being a cautious scared 16-year-old boy at the time, we created a system of hitting them to make sure they were legal age and actually a girl. They believed I was in my early 20s. We needed to make sure they were women because we were moving into voice chatting aka phone 6, like the commercials at night you'd see on TV. That's how I got the idea. The best part about it was we could charge a premium on that. $100 for 30 minutes, $200 for an hour or a package deal. $300 for an hour of chat and 2 nude pics. Most nudes sent weren't even the actual woman. I had this going for about 2.5 years before my mother found out through my phone I kept having long distance text. Over time I had gotten these women's hashes for business purposes. My mother went through my phone, seen the numbers, and called each and every woman on that phone. She was under the belief that I was online dating, which they told her I was to cover. Although when she told them I was 17 they were shocked as hell. My mom never found out what I was actually doing, but after that my mom beat the shit out of me and took away my PlayStation for like 2 years. I eventually got back on, but everything I has built was deleted and gone. I have never spoken of this to anyone in my entire life. I'm 27 now, living a normal life. Not really much of a gamer, but damn, I think about that time at moments. Honestly, my biggest regret is that I wish I was smarter with the money I gained from it instead of blowing it all. So that's my confession. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Now for the next story. I partially blame myself for my 14-year-old little brother's death. My brother had just turned 14 and was in full teenage asshole mode. My parents had grounded him for the first week of spring break for fucking up in school. I was 24 and wasn't sure what my role was to my brother at that time. Am I the cool older brother or the responsible adult? We kinda drifted away when he hit 12. My parents didn't exactly tell me to make sure he stayed home. I think they assumed my brother would adhere to his grounding, and if he didn't then I would say something. He ended up leaving to go to his friend's house, and it was awkward because he kept on looking at me to see if I would say anything. Again, I wasn't sure. I mean, if he were 10 then I would. But he was 14 and not a little kid, and I'm not his sitter. He went off on his skateboard. He was hit by a car while crossing the street several blocks down and died. I lied to my parents about not seeing him leave and they believed me because I would have reminded him that he was grounded. That kills me. He would have pouted and reminded me that I wasn't his mom or dad, but he would have listened to me. The only thing that haunted me more was seeing his body, which was so pale. Now for the next story. I fucked my cousin. I've been really wanting to talk to someone about this, but I literally can't, so I'm coming here. Okay, so I lived with my cousins and grandmother when I was a young, and when I was a literal child, like 4, 5-ish, me and my cousin would play house, where we basically had sex. I was too young to remember if he actually stuck it in, or if we just like grinded. But I moved to a different town, so we never saw each other anymore, and it ended obviously. Just wanna say, before I keep going, I know how wrong this is and all the risks and shit, but it's a little too late now. Then when I was like 7 to 10, I don't remember, we got kicked out of our place, so I had to stay with my cousins again, and of course we started playing house again. But this like he actually stuck it. BC, I have a vivid memory of him saying he was going to do so. I also remember we did it outside in the woods behind his house LMAO. Then OFC, when I moved back in with my parents it stopped again. And now I'm 17, and I stayed at my grandmother's house for like 2 weeks and my cousins live with her, so I'm sure you know where this is going. Honestly, I didn't think anything was gonna happen. BC, we've grown up and are old enough to know that it's wrong. But one night me and my cousin were watching Netflix in the living room. Then he asks if I wanna go smoke, and OFC I said yes. Anyways, we smoke then go back to watching Netflix, right? And I have my legs on his lap. BC, it's comfy, and he starts rubbing my inner thigh, and he's slowing inching his way up to my thing. He then like fingers me through my underwear. I was wearing a skirt. Anyways, I ended up gave him a hand job, and he said you wanna taste it, so I started sucking it, blah blah blah. Then couple nights later we're on the couch again and we were cuddling and I could feel that he was hard. I didn't do anything but I was turned on LMAO. Anyways he started grinding. Then now one thing led to another and we fucked. And I think I have feeling for him even though I know it's wrong and disgusting. And I'm very ashamed of myself. But there's nothing I can really do about it. And the worst part is I wanna do it again. Now for the last story. I want to tell my story of becoming a dad for a girl that had no one else there for her, so I guess I should introduce myself a little. I'm Daniel and work as a state trooper in Washington, but was born in British Columbia, my family moving to the US when I was little. And before becoming a trooper, I worked as a regular police officer for a good number of years. And the first time I ever met the girl who would become my daughter was when her grandmother passed away from an accident at home. She had fallen down the stairs and had a concussion. I took her to the hospital in my patrol car and stayed with her in the air practically all night until we both fell asleep, waiting for any family to come. But they never did. I found out later that her dad left her mom when he found out she was pregnant and her mom died giving birth to her. And her grandmother, sadly, did not survive her injuries and passed away that night. Yeah, a shitty situation all around. It all just went so fast in the blink of an eye. She was 11, by the way. The next day, CPS had a social worker come as well as another officer to relieve me. They talked about putting her in state custody, but I offered to take her in, at least as a temporary guardian at first. She was kind of like I don't even know you, but I was insistent. A few days went by, CPS had to inspect my home for livability of course, and make sure she wasn't walking into squalor, and eventually they brought her to my place. I remember she didn't even recognize me for a split second at first, because I wasn't in my uniform, and she thought I was someone else. I could tell, just by looking in her eyes, that the shock of the whole situation was still there, so I sat her down in the living room and just calmly explained that everything was gonna be okay and even just told her a bit about myself like what I do for my job, showed her pictures of my family, even just random stuff, just to get her to calm down a little, which she did. The days, weeks, and months went by, and, while we had some bumps in the road along the way, and got mad at each other, we were getting closer. She was becoming more independent as a person and maybe a bit rebellious, but also would run to me first with questions about whatever was on her mind, hoping I would have the answer. Her curiosity about everything was, and is, so cute. She must have dragged me to almost every museum in Washington, because those were basically pieces of heaven for her. And in the meantime for me, I went to state patrol training in the spring of 2019, and it took over 5 months to complete, so she had to stay with my sister and her husband for a time. This was when I realized I truly loved her, because the first few weeks were a struggle, and I was racking my brain thinking about her, just hoping she was okay. I'd call her when I could, but training was practically non-stop. Still, I got through it somehow and graduated. She and other family actually came too, and I nearly broke down just seeing her sitting above me in the audience, and I ran over to her as soon as the ceremony ended and gave her the biggest hug I could. That day was also the first time I ever told her I love her, and it made everyone else cry seeing us together. I should also mention that by this point, I had already adopted her as my own. And the day after my graduation, I took her to Alki Beach in Seattle, somewhere she'd never been yet and always wanted to. Just the two of us. It was honestly just perfect seeing her so happy and carefree. So fast forward to today, and we are still doing great. I've talked to her about going to therapy for what happened with her grandma, and how fast everything went in the beginning, but she said she doesn't want to. We thankfully still have her grandma's ashes, and she has a pendant that belonged to her mom that she always wears, so at least she still has some connection to them. And I'm glad she has lots of friends, though now she's getting to that age where boys are starting to become a topic of conversation. I'm hoping I don't have to lose my job over making one of them go missing for hurting her. I'm being sarcastic, probably. I trust her to know what she's doing though. Her little annoyances and habits drive me up a wall sometimes, but it's never out of true anger. I love her just too much to ever stay mad at her. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe. Have an amazing day.